My husband sat across from me at the breakfast table last April, looked me dead in the eyes, and said, "I've been carrying this family on my back for 31 years. Every dollar I make disappears into this house, and I have nothing to show for it. From now on, you want something, you pay for it yourself." I put down my coffee cup very slowly and said, "Okay." He blinked. I think he expected me to cry or argue or at least look wounded. I didn't. I just said, "Okay," picked up my cup again, and finished my breakfast. That was a Tuesday. By Friday, he understood what he'd done. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is not important. What I am is 63 years old, a former school librarian, and a woman who spent 3 decades making sure everyone else in my house had what they needed before I ever thought about myself. I married my husband when I was 32. He was 36. We met at a church potluck dinner, which feels almost too on the nose now that I think about it, because potlucks are literally events where you show up and expect other people to feed you. He was charming. He was funny. He wore a blue button-down shirt and brought a store-bought pie that he passed off as his own, and I laughed when he finally admitted it, and I thought I could love this man. So I did. We had 2 children. Our son is 26 now, lives in Portland, calls every Sunday. Our daughter is 28, lives 40 minutes away, works in hospital administration. She has her father's dark eyes and my stubbornness, which means she turned out just fine. The early years were fine, tight on money, which I expected. He worked in sales. Commission-based, which meant some months were very good, and some months I was stretching a pound of ground beef into 4 separate dinners. I didn't complain. That was the deal, and I understood the deal. What I didn't understand, what I kept not understanding for about 25 years, was that the deal was always being quietly renegotiated without my input. It started small, the way these things always do. He'd come home and say, "Did you really need to buy the name brand pasta? The store brand is the same thing." And I'd say, "The store brand is gummy." And he'd give me this look, this particular look he had, like I was a teenager, who'd just explained why designer jeans were a necessity. Dismissive, slightly pitying. Then it was the grocery receipts. He started going through them. Not every week, not at first, just occasionally. He'd pull the receipt off the counter and scan it the way an auditor scans a balance sheet and say things like, "What's this? $14 for olive oil. We have vegetable oil." Or, "You bought flowers?" For the kitchen table, like I had charged a vacation to his credit card. I started hiding small purchases, nothing extravagant. A $10 paperback, a bag of the coffee I actually liked instead of the one he bought in bulk from the warehouse store that tasted like hot water with ambition. I'd tuck the receipts into my coat pocket and throw them away in the parking lot. I felt like a teenager sneaking cigarettes, which is a humiliating way to feel when you are in your 50s and you have been running a household for decades. The household. Let me tell you about the household. I did the grocery shopping. Every week, every store, every list. I clipped coupons before apps existed for that, and then I learned the apps when they came along. I cooked dinner 6 nights a week, Sunday through Friday, and on Saturdays we had leftovers or takeout, depending on budget. I packed lunches for both kids from kindergarten through their senior years of high school because the cafeteria food was bad and a packed lunch was cheaper. I kept a running inventory of what was in the pantry in a little notebook on the inside of the cabinet door, which my daughter once photographed because she said it looked like a military operations manual. I did the laundry. Not just washing and drying, which anyone can do. I mean the sorting, the treating of stains, the knowing that his golf shirts couldn't go in the dryer and which of our son's sports uniforms needed to be washed twice and the specific way my daughter wanted her sweaters laid flat to dry, which she had asked me about approximately once in 2009, and I had simply remembered. I scheduled every appointment. Doctor, dentist, vet when we had the dog, furnace maintenance every fall, gutter cleaning every November, the pest control that comes in spring. I made the appointments and I wrote them on the calendar, and I gave him 48 hours notice before anything that involved him so he could act as though he'd known all along. I handled every school thing. Permission slips, fundraisers, parent-teacher conferences, volunteer hours, the silent auction at the spring carnival for 11 consecutive years. I kept every immunization record, every report card, every form that needed signing. I managed the social calendar. His sister's birthday, his parents' anniversary, our own anniversary. Christmas cards. Thank you notes after the kids' birthday parties. Remembering that his coworker's wife had just had surgery and prompting him to ask about her so he didn't look like someone who didn't pay attention. I did all of this while also working part-time as a school librarian for 18 years, 4 days a week, 22 hours, benefits, enough to cover the kids' activity fees, school clothes, and the car insurance on my vehicle. He worked full-time in sales. He made the larger income. He knew this. He held this. He held it the way certain men hold open doors, in a way that makes clear you should be grateful rather than just walking through. He was not a bad man. I want to say that clearly because he was not. He didn't yell. He wasn't cruel. He paid the mortgage and the utilities, and he showed up to the kids' events, and he was, by most metrics, a present and functional father. But he had a blind spot the size of a county about what it actually took to run our lives, and over time that blind spot had calcified into something that felt less like ignorance and more like a choice. The comment about bleeding him dry was not the first time he'd said something like it. It was just the first time he'd said it with that particular completeness, that finality. Like he'd been building the sentence for years and had finally gotten it exactly right. We'd had an argument the night before, a real one, which was unusual for us. I had bought curtain panels for the living room. $34 a panel, 2 panels, $68 total. I'd been looking at the old curtains for 4 years and meaning to replace them, and I finally did. He saw the receipt on the counter. I hadn't even hidden it because I'd thought it's $68. I'm not hiding $68. And he said, $68 for curtains we didn't need. I said we needed them. The old ones were faded and one of them had a tear along the bottom hem. He said they still worked. I said working and good are not the same thing. He said you spend money like it grows in the backyard. I said I spend money carefully and I always have. He said I work every day so this family can have what it needs and it's never enough. And I said I work too. And he said part-time. That's not the same thing. I retired 2 years ago. I want to note that. I had retired, so it wasn't even current. He was referring to a part-time job I no longer had as evidence of my lesser contribution. I went to bed that night. I didn't sleep much. And somewhere around 2 in the morning, I thought, all right, if that's how it is, then let's see what that actually looks like. By breakfast the next morning, I was calm. I was very, very calm in the way that you get calm when you have made a decision, and the decision has settled into your bones, and you are no longer afraid of the outcome. He said what he said about bleeding him dry. He said from now on, every penny I spend comes from my own pocket. I said, okay. He went to work. I made a list, not a grocery list, a different kind of list. I wrote down every single thing I do in a given week that keeps this house and this life running. Not to show him. Not yet. Just for me. Just to make sure I was seeing it clearly and not being dramatic about it the way he sometimes implied I was being dramatic. The list took up 2 pages of a legal pad. Then I wrote a second list, the market rate for each item. I pulled up figures online. A personal chef running 1 dinner service a night, 6 nights a week, that's a significant number annually. A household manager, someone who handles scheduling, appointments, vendor coordination, that's a salary with benefits. A laundry service, a weekly grocery and errand runner. Childcare, which was no longer applicable but had been for nearly 2 decades. I added it up. I won't tell you the total because it would sound like I'm making a point, and I was past the point-making stage. I was in the demonstrating stage. But first, I let things run their course. I went to the grocery store that day. I bought what I needed for myself. A rotisserie chicken, some salad greens, a good loaf of bread, the coffee I actually like, 2 things of yogurt, a punnet of strawberries. I spent $29.60, and I paid with my own debit card, which has my own small savings in it from years of birthday money, and the occasional tutoring session I did on the side. I did not buy anything for him. This sounds petty when I write it, and I know that. But you have to understand, in 31 years, I had never once gone to a grocery store and not bought things for him. Not once. It had simply never occurred to me not to. Buying for myself meant buying for us. Those were the same thing. Except apparently they weren't, according to Tuesday morning's breakfast conversation. So I bought for myself. When he got home, he looked in the refrigerator and said, "Did you not go to the store today?" I said, "I did." He looked again. "There's nothing for dinner." I said, "There's food." I gestured toward my shelf. I had reorganized the refrigerator so my things were on one side. "I have a rotisserie chicken and I'm making a salad." He stared at me. "For yourself." "For myself," I confirmed. "You said every penny I spend comes from my own pocket, so I spent my own money on my own food." The look on his face was something I wish I could have photographed, not for cruelty, just to remember that I saw it. He made a peanut butter sandwich. He's 67 years old, and he stood in our kitchen making a peanut butter sandwich for dinner because he did not know what else to do. I ate my chicken and my salad in the living room with the new curtains, and I watched the evening news, and I felt something I had not felt in a very long time. I felt like myself. The next morning, I woke up early and made my coffee. The coffee I liked, measured exactly for 1 cup in the small French press I bought years ago that he always called fussy, and I sat with it at the kitchen table with a book. He came downstairs and went to the coffee maker, and there was nothing in it. You didn't make coffee, he said. I made mine, I said, in the French press. He stood there in his robe looking at the empty coffee maker the way a man looks at a vending machine that's eaten his dollar. He knows how to make coffee. He's made it before when I was sick or away visiting my sister. He figured it out that morning, too. It just took him 20 minutes and a fair amount of clattering around because he couldn't find the filters, which were in the third drawer on the left, where they have been for 11 years. I didn't say anything. I turned a page. By day 3, there was no clean laundry for him. This was not a manipulation. I simply did my laundry. My clothes, my laundry. His clothes were in the hamper where they had been when I did the wash. He came to me on Thursday evening, still in work clothes, clearly looking for clean ones, and said, "Did you do laundry?" "I did mine," I said. "Mine's in the hamper, I know." He waited for me to say something else. I looked back at my book. He did his own laundry that night. He shrunk his favorite golf shirt because he put it in the dryer on high, and he didn't know that those shirts run warm. I heard him swear from the laundry room. I did not offer guidance. The following Sunday, his younger sister came for dinner. She came every Sunday, had for years. I made dinner every Sunday, and she came and ate it, and sometimes she brought a bottle of wine, and sometimes she forgot. And either way, we had a lovely time because I like her. I genuinely like her. She's a good woman, but I had always been the one in the kitchen making the things she drove 40 minutes to eat. That Sunday, I set one place at the dining table, mine. I made myself roasted salmon with lemon and herbs, green beans with almonds, a small dish of rice, a portion I could finish comfortably. I set the table nicely, cloth napkin, the good water glass, and when I heard his car pull into the driveway bringing her home from the airport where she'd just landed from a work trip, I was already seated. She came in the front door calling hello and walked into the dining room and stopped. She looked at the table, one place setting. She looked at me, eating my salmon. She looked at him standing beside her, and she said, "What is happening?" He started to explain. I let him explain. He said something about finances and fairness and his own money in 31 years, and to his credit, he did not make me sound unreasonable. He just said what had happened fairly accurately, which itself surprised me a little. His sister was quiet through the whole thing. She's 4 years younger than him. She's a no-nonsense woman who works in insurance and has very little patience for what she calls factual drama, so I expected her to call us both ridiculous and suggest we order pizza. Instead, she looked at him for a long moment and said, "Do you know what it would cost to replace what she does?" He said, "That's not the point." She said, "That is the exact point." She pulled out a chair at the table, sat down, and looked at him with the expression I have seen her use on her adult children when they say something she finds deeply unintelligent. "I have been eating dinner in this house every Sunday for 11 years. In 11 years, have you cooked a single one of those dinners?" He said, "That's not. Have you?" She said. Silence. "She made every single one," she said, "and you told her she bleeds you dry." She shook her head. "You don't even know what you have." He sat down at the table then, not at the set place, there wasn't one for him, just at the corner in one of the other chairs. He looked at the table for a while. His sister looked at me and said, "That salmon smells incredible." And then she said, "Would you mind if I ran and grabbed something and came back? I'd love to sit with you." I said I would love that very much. She came back 20 minutes later with Thai takeout for 2, and we sat together at my table with my nice napkins, and we had a genuinely lovely dinner. He disappeared into the study for most of it. After she left, he came and sat across from me in the living room. He didn't say much at first. He looked at his hands. He's not a man who has ever been comfortable with this kind of conversation, and I had over the years done a lot of the emotional labor of making these conversations easier for him, asking the right questions, providing the right pauses, being a gentle on-ramp to his own feelings. I didn't do that this time. I waited. He said, I didn't mean it the way it came out. I said, you've said versions of it for years. He didn't argue with that. That surprised me too. He said, I think I've been, and then he stopped, and I could see him trying to find an honest word instead of an excuse, which was unfamiliar on his face. I think I've been unfair. I said, yes. He said, I didn't see it. I said, I know. And then I said, I want you to see it. And I got up and I went to the kitchen drawer where I'd put the legal pad and I brought it back and I set it on the coffee table between us. He picked it up. He read both pages. He was quiet for a long time. When he put it down, he said, you added dollar amounts. I did. He looked at the total. He'd gotten there on his own, running his finger down the column. He didn't say anything for a while. Then he said very quietly, I thought it all just happened. And right there, that sentence was the thing I'd been waiting 31 years to hear him say. Not because it was an apology, it wasn't, not yet, but because it was the truth. He had thought it just happened. He had watched dinners appear and clean shirts appear, and calendars manage themselves and children get to appointments, and somehow in his mind there had been no labor attached to any of it, no planning, no hours, no effort. It had just happened, like weather, like gravity. I said, it happened because I made it happen, every day. He nodded. We were quiet for a while, the two of us, in the living room with the new curtains that worked perfectly and cost $68 and were worth every cent. He asked what I needed from him. Not in a transactional way, not like he was solving a problem. He just asked. I think he genuinely didn't know, which was its own answer. I told him. I said I needed him to see it. Not just once, not just because his sister called him out over Thai takeout, but going forward. I needed him to know on a Wednesday that the house runs because someone runs it. I needed him to say thank you. I needed him to stop auditing my grocery receipts as though I were a suspect. I needed to buy my coffee without hiding it. He said he could do that. I didn't tell him I believed him or that I didn't. I said we'd see. I went back to the kitchen and made us both a cup of tea. Not because it was my job. Because I wanted to. Because I was ready to. Because it felt like the right way to end that evening. He took the cup and said thank you. He said it carefully, like a man relearning a language. It's been 4 months since that Tuesday. Things are not magically different because real life doesn't work that way. He still sometimes forgets to notice. He still leaves his shoes by the door instead of putting them away, and he still checks out of the room mentally when the conversation is about something he considers a minor household detail. But last week he planned our anniversary dinner, made a reservation, figured out the logistics, told me 3 days in advance so I didn't have to wonder. He did all of it himself. And when we sat down at the restaurant and the server brought the bread basket, he looked across the table at me and said, I've been thinking about what you showed me. The list. I said, and he said, I owe you a lot of Sunday dinners. I told him he could start next weekend. He made spaghetti. It was not great. The sauce was watery, and he'd overcooked the pasta, and he stood in the kitchen looking at his plate with the expression of a man confronting an uncomfortable truth about himself. I ate it and told him it was a good start. And it was. It actually was. Some things take 31 years to learn. I've decided I have enough patience left to see what the next chapter looks like.